We're on. Let me send her a quick text. Do you have her number? All right, there she is. Okay. Hey, Christine. I have you on mute.
Yes, let me unmute. I am here.
Okay.
To log on as we speak.
Yes. All right. Well, we have everybody here. So Adam, I am ready whenever you are.
Yep. Call the hearing to order. Michelle, can you please roll call?
Mr. Pahovich?
Here.
Mr. McNulty?
Here.
Ms. Trabellis?
Here.
Mr. Pierce?
Here.
And Ms. Harris?
Here.
Motion carries.
All right. We're here tonight to discuss rezoning application ZON-21-02, Real Property Design and Development LLC for 8119 South Old State Road, Lewis Center, Ohio. Before starting, I'm just going to go through some ground rules. When the board is ready for public comment, there will be an opportunity for members of the public to speak during the hearing via Zoom. Statements made or written in any chat rooms shall not serve as public comment. If you would like to speak, please unmute yourself, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Residents wishing to speak shall keep their comments limited to the merits of the application. Personal attacks on the applicant, township officials, or other residents will not be tolerated, and residents may lose the right to speak. The chair reserves the right to have residents muted who engage in personal attacks. All right, Michelle, do you want to run through the staff report right now, or should we?
Yep, that works.
Okay.
Our office doorbell keeps ringing. I don't know if it's some kids outside, so I apologize for any background noise, but I will go through this quickly. I did prepare a staff report for the board members that was sent out in advance, but just to go over the case, this is application number ZON-21-02. The applicant is Real Property Design and Development, co-owned by John C. Wicks. And this is located at 8119 South Old State Road in Lewis Center, just north of the Innit Bear Trail. Jeff, if you can help me add the people to join in the room, that would be great. The applicant is requesting to rezone 4.96 acres from FR1 to PER district to allow for 22 attached residential units. This will be restricted to ages 55 and older, and associated amenities will be included. The site is currently zoned farm residential district with an existing residence and as well as accessory structures. The property is primarily surrounded by residential district. The only thing different from single family is that planned elderly residential district, which is that Innit Bear Trail, and that is an assisted living facility. As far as the 2018 comprehensive land use plan that the commission and the staff typically refer to for guidance, This property in question is referenced as sub-area 6 of the comprehensive land use plan. The sub-area recommends density generally of 2 units per acre with centralized sanitary sewer. However, in addition, this area may be appropriate for a planned elderly residential district, which would be up to 4 dwelling units per acre. This is the site plan for your reference. Under staff's review, I won't go over the details too much, but they are proposing a density, net density at 4.44 dwelling units per acre and a gross at 4.20 dwelling units per acre. This is an independent living facility, and I'm sure John Wicks can touch on that more. They are proposing a 57.06% of open space. Parking will be 4 parking spaces per unit. Each will have a 2-car garage and 2 additional parking spaces in the driveway. The minimum floor area will be 1,200 square feet. As far as the development standards go, I want to make it clear, I did provide the setbacks within that are proposed for this district, but our zoning resolution, the Orange Township zoning resolution, does not provide setback standards for a planned elderly residential district. This is what the applicant's proposing, and it's obviously up to the zoning commission's recommendation to move forward with it, but I would like to make that clear. The applicant is proposing 2 divergences. One is under section 15.02 for the minimum acreage requirement. This site is 4.96 acres, so they would be requesting a divergence to be less than the 10 acres. The second is the density. The density allows for 4 dwelling units per acre, and this is 4.2 for the gross density. Staff did have additional comments. The first few are just technical things as far as avoiding the use of words as preliminary, proposed, etc. We need to modify the disclaimer in the application. We will want to include the following stipulation or comments that we have is to include the open space calculations in the development text. I know some of the residents had concerns about that. And then a couple other technical issues or errors that we would like to change is this removing the setbacks from the table, and I can talk with the applicant further on that. I did recommend providing a similar landscape buffer along the eastern property line. Based on some of our residents' concerns, landscape seemed to be one of the bigger ones. And then staff questions the use of the vinyl siding. I believe that I'm sure the board will probably talk about that this evening, and just wanted to make note of that as we've had some prohibited materials, including vinyl, in the past. And then obviously staff always encourages communication and transparency with adjacent neighbors and property owners. For tech review, I did reach out to the Orange Township Fire Department, and they have not reviewed any plans for this at this time. I'm gonna lean towards, because of the recent discussion the applicant has had with the county engineers, the access does need to be reconfigured, and I'll let John talk about that a little further. This application was heard at the Delaware County Regional Planning Commission. They recommended conditional approval for this case during their hearing on February 25th, 2021. And with only one stipulation or condition, and that was consolation with the county engineer and fire department regarding the final configuration of Monroe Drive and Fire Access Road. So that's all I have. There is, Jeff, can you help me share the screen? I'd like, the applicant had some slides to show. I need to figure out what's going outside. Jeff, if you go under the zoning commission folder, under the hearing date, there is a presentation that John Wicks asked me to show, and I'd like you to share your screen. Apologize.
What folder was that again?
It's under the hearing date folder, the 316 ZC hearing.
Okay.
And then I'll stop sharing my screen if you can take over. All right, and Adam, if it's all right, I think the applicant had a brief presentation.
Yes, please go ahead. Yep. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much, BZC members, for the opportunity to be here. I wish I could be in person. Hopefully we'll get to that point here sooner than later. My name is John Wicks with Real Property Design and Development at 15 North Liberty Street in Powell. I'm also a resident of Orange Township, live off of Orange Road with my wife and 4 children as well. Can you guys hear me okay? You having issues? Okay. Okay. I'm excited to present this new project. It's known as independent living at Old Stay right now. It's designed for residents, aging residents of Orange Township who may have raised their families in the township, no longer need to stay in their larger homes, but still want to stay in the neighborhood. So it's a rental community for those who prefer to rent and who wish to stay in the township and remain active members of the community. Michelle did an excellent job presenting this submittal, so I won't go into great detail of the project, but of course we can answer some questions at the end. If you could go to the next slide, please. So just to give you a little background, how I came up with this concept. In 2018, Orange Township undertook a pretty exhaustive study to determine the best path forward for growth in the township. The effort included feedback from nearly 500 residents via 3 meetings, in-person meetings, and online surveys. A common theme among the findings of the study included a shortage and a need for senior housing. That was pretty clearly indicated throughout the study. In particular, sub-area 6, which is shown on the slide here, was mentioned specifically as a potential location for senior housing. And of course, this property is adjacent to the Inlet Bear Trail, which is an assisted living facility. So in my mind, this property always seemed like it made more sense to be some sort of a PERD zoning classification than just a single family housing. Next slide, please. This slide within the comprehensive land use study, this was public input, and it specifically shows the opinions of the residents and those who prepared the study that there is a lack of senior housing, and that's a weakness for the township. And further, that new types of housing and infill development are opportunities for smart growth within the township, both of which I think are accomplished here with this PERD zoning request. Next slide, please. Within the goals and strategies section of that study that was done in 2018, there was a conclusion that the zoning commission should encourage more PERD districts to accommodate the older residents of Orange Township. So again, I feel like I was guided by this document that was published in 2018, and as a resident of Orange Township, and of course I studied this just as a resident with curiosity. I felt like this was exactly what was being called for in the comprehensive land use plan. Next slide, please. I saw some feedback from some of the neighbors. I understand that there are certain concerns about property values and traffic. Orange Township residents can feel confident that this project, as proposed, will not have a negative impact on either. Daily traffic counts for senior housing is far less than that for regular single family housing. Number one. Number two, the property is completely segregated from any of the surrounding neighborhoods like Walker Wood. So there is no traffic, there's no through traffic from this project into the existing neighborhoods. And the high quality of construction and architectural standards that are consistent with the area and are a part of this proposal, that will ensure the neighboring property values will remain high and continue to build equity. Michelle did mention one thing about the county engineer and the fire department. There will be a change within the next submission, and I won't be requesting a vote today, but we're going to do something a little bit different with the terminus of Monroe Drive, most likely add a cul-de-sac that would be built to public standards to allow fire trucks and all other vehicles to turn around and stay on the public infrastructure. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions. With me on the call is Michael Maestros. He's with New Avenue Architects, and Kyle Weber is the engineer with Kleinder's Group. They can answer any technical questions that I may not be able to answer. So, thank you.
This is Adam. I can start with my comments. So John or whoever on the team, there was a comment by the residents there nearby, which would be to the east. We're saying that, there was screening on the north side of the property, but nothing was shown on the east. But if I remember correctly, and I think it was actually just shown in that image you guys had it pulled up, but there is some trees there now that appear to be not on this property. Maybe there are a few there. Is there, and I would imagine most of those are to remain, correct? That's the intent, or at least to have, there will be some type of screening there.
Yeah. The existing landscaping that exists there today is primarily on the Walkerwood open space site anyway. And those trees are far more mature than anything we would plant along a buffer on our property. Of course, they'll grow into a nice mature buffer, but those trees are pretty robust at this time. And you're right, we did not propose a significant buffer along the east side for that reason. However, if there are particular areas that have bare spots, visual open spaces through there, we'll be happy to work with the residents and the neighbors to come up with a better screening option on the east side.
Okay.
I guess, Adam, if I can add to that, I mean, would you all be willing to ensure a continuous tree line on the eastern perimeter?
Well, I guess that, tree buffers aren't designed to be completely opaque with the first year. I mean, they're designed to grow in and create a dense screening over time. And so, yes, I'd be willing to put additional trees in there that'll supplement the tree row that's already there. And again, to try to ultimately end up with a continuous buffer.
Thank you. Sorry, Adam.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, that's thanks, Michelle.
I'm just curious about what decisions go into making something a rental versus condos.
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, interestingly, we've talked back and forth about potentially condominiumizing this. The answer is there are no rentals for 55 and over in Orange Township anywhere right now. I know there's a project up by Evans Farm that's proposed to be that, but they have not broken ground yet either. So there are folks out there who prefer to rent, who don't want the burden of ownership and would like to have, a nice quality residence to rent and just not have that ownership or maintenance obligation. With that being said, we are considering potentially condominiumizing this so that in the future the unit could be sold off as the market changes, which it always does. So that would be something I'd want to have the right to do with this zoning category.
Yeah, I think sometimes condos and ownership work better than rentals, at least with people like us or township trustees and such. And the next question, since Michelle had referred to that there aren't any necessarily zoning setback standards, that was the other comment I saw was on the north side that was a 30-foot. Is there any possibility of making that larger?
Well, to answer the first question, yeah, it's 30 feet there. And in fact, because we have a residential district abutting another residential district, that's pretty standard to have a 30-foot setback. The back of the Walkerwood properties have a 30-foot setback as well. So we're not any less than what that's platted out to be. With that being said, I think there is room to possibly slide the buildings a little bit further south to accommodate a slightly larger setback. I guess we have to see exactly what other comments we have to address to make sure we can accommodate that. But
No,
There,
John, I agree with you. The 30-foot has been the Orange Township standard and you've met that with, even without the, no, I agree with you. That's been the standard and there is 30-foot, of course, on the Walker Woods side.
well, we're willing to work with the neighbors any way we can to make things a little bit easier for everybody, as long as it, you know, as long as we can accomplish what we're trying to do here with our plan.
And the
And-
roads inside, these are going to be maintained by a rental association and not maintained by Orange Township?
That's correct. These are private streets.
So that's why I saw private roads. I was just, you know, reiterating that with you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, hi. This is Sanipan here. And I would like
Oh,
to.
sorry, Sandy Van, we're not doing a public comment at this point, so this is only open to the board members.
And this, and the vinyl, which we've had questions about in the past, but I think we even approved another high quality unit because there are some high quality vinyls. Can you address that at all?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, as you probably alluding to, vinyl, the quality of vinyl siding has really improved over the last 20 years. If you were to stand on this property and look out at all the homes that surround the property, each and every one of those homes has vinyl siding. So it really wouldn't change the character of what the neighborhood currently has. However, we would commit to putting in, you know, the newer, higher quality vinyl siding that is an option today. And I do not have samples with me, but we're happy to bring some, deliver some to Michelle, or bring some that we can show on camera at the next hearing.
Yeah, just to add on that, I know in the past, and we have the architects explain this further, but we've required a minimum beaded. Am I saying that right, Christine? I'm looking at you to help me with this. So
I actually have that in my notes. Generally, I think we've requested like a profile, which would be like a beaded or something that's a little more substantial and less plastic looking. But we've also required a certain mill thickness like we did on the US 23 overlay and like we've had on other multifamily units, not PRDs, but multifamily, have requested to use vinyl. And we've requested a certain thickness to make sure it doesn't get park marks due to weathering, or it doesn't fade in the sun and things like that. So that's one of our concerns with vinyl, is that if you get the lesser quality vinyl, it'll fade. If you have a hailstorm or a windstorm, it'll distort. It might distort in the heat, things of that nature. So we request a thickness, which I can't remember off the top of my head. And Michelle, I was hoping you could provide them with that information, because I know we requested on the 23 overlay that they use the upgraded vinyl.
yeah, I will include that in the comments.
That answer your question? Dennis, did you still have comment?
No, I remember we approved a multifamily that we liked. I went out and saw the models. It had vinyl and it really looked good, but you had mentioned the standards, which I'm sure that those were designed to those standards, and that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
We need to put some numbers to it or some statistics or some specifications to it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people might prefer fiber cement. Fiber cement also has its own issues. So we've requested, at least if you use vinyl, use a higher quality. So I don't know if Mr. Wicks, what your response is to that, but.
We plan to own the property and own the
Okay.
project, so we certainly don't want to have something cheap looking, or that's something that's going to require maintenance over time. So we're happy to provide samples to the township prior to any approvals.
Okay. If you want, I can go on with my comments. I have a few, and some that have already been touched on. One was actually how that Monroe Drive private street is going to terminate. And I guess you're going to redo that now per the fire department. Actually, if you scroll back up, because my concern was where the existing house is, they're going to, looks like, vacate their driveway off Old State. And then it looks like they're getting a new driveway off of Old State, which generally my understanding is that once you Generally, the engineering prefers that you just vacate off of Old State because it's very difficult, especially trying to make like a left turn onto Old State at certain hours. Now, of course, there is no more rush hour because of COVID, but I'm assuming that one day rush hour will return, and it's a safety issue pulling in and out of a private drive onto Old State. So if you're re-engineering, I would suggest please look at that connection. I know you have like, you know, those bollards that, you know, the fire department can get through, but it's actually very close also to where that driveway is. And I'm just waiting for that person to, you know, turn out of their driveway and into those bollards. So I would request that you take a look at that connection there and see if you can come up with a better solution than what's going on right now. And I'm assuming with the input from the engineering and the fire department, that might be relooked at anyway.
Yes, ma'am. That was a comment that was made by the engineering department, and
Okay.
we discussed that at length. As a matter of fact, I mean, the concern we don't want to have is an FR1 house that goes through private streets to access the public road.
And that I understand as well. And that was my other sort of question of, you know, maybe making Monroe Drive part of it extended to make it a public street. And I understand the rest will be private. So just like I said, revisit that.
Okay.
I did have some questions about sort of density site issues. And again, it has to do with the unit on the corner there on the north side off of Old State. I know, I believe you have like I guess it's right up there, the setback, and that you state in the report that the setback is greater than the current house, but the current house is very, very close to Old State, especially when Old State was expanded. It looks like the standard at one time was around 70 feet for that exactly. And it looks like, I don't know if you can scroll up or not, but it's even closer to Old State than the houses above it in Walker Wood. So I would request to try to take a look at that because I think that's a little too close, especially if someone's going to be, you know, living in that house with their bedrooms there.
Okay, yeah, we'll take a look at how we can possibly increase that setback. The point I was trying to make is that as you're driving up north on Old State and you look at the existing home, the side, and that'll be a side of a house, that won't be a front, so that'll be a side, and it'll feel and appear to be further off the road than the existing home. And then of course the next house to the north will even be further off the road.
Yeah, I would try to line it up with the next house on the north because the older farm residences off of Old State, since they've widened the road, are very, very close. And Old State in that vicinity is basically what, a 5-lane road that someone's residence is going to be off of. Now, granted, they won't access it from Old State, but it's just a concern. I don't see that unit being the first one to sell, put it that way.
Okay. Fair enough, thank you.
So if you can try to figure that out, that was one of my concerns. I think Michelle had already made the comment about sort of somewhere on your development plan, labeling out what the open space calculations are, and also put in how the pond fits into those calculations. I know there were some questions from the neighbors about your calculations. So you just might want to, like I say, spell them out, and only a certain percentage, I think 10% of that pond can count towards your open space calculations. So just put them on there somewhere so everyone's happy and knows that they're correct and there's no question that you're, you know, not doing your proper open space. The one comment I also had was that, and I'm not familiar with the PRD. We've only had a couple of them zoned this way in our township. It's a relatively new zoning classification. But my understanding that the PRDs are supposed to have walkways that connect the buildings to the green space. And right now there's no sidewalks in front of the buildings whatsoever. That you walk outside your driveway and you have to walk in your street to get to a sidewalk. I'm not really for that, especially if this is supposed to be like a walkable residential community for older people, I don't think they should be walking in the street to get to the sidewalk on the other side of the road, or in some cases, they don't even have a sidewalk on the other side of the road. They have more residential units. So this is also sort of a side issue. I would prefer that you have sidewalks actually in front of the residential units that then link up to like the gazebo, or link up to like you have one in front of the mail kiosk and things like that. But right now, like I said, you don't. So if someone's walking their dog, they have to walk in the road. Now, granted, it is a private street, but still, I would personally prefer sidewalks, which then also means you gotta push your buildings around because you need 5 feet for a sidewalk, and then you need 20 feet for a driveway so you can get your parking spot, and it all sort of rolls downhill from there. So I would prefer, like I said, to have the sidewalks connected to the residential units. And I believe, like I said, our code says they have to connect to the buildings. But Michelle can double check that for you. I know there were some comments from the residents about site lighting, and I'll defer to other board members. Generally, in residential districts, we don't have streetlights. Walkerwood doesn't have street, like most residential districts don't have streetlights. I think the only district I remember approving streetlights for was Evans Farm, and that was in the sort of commercial area, where also they might have multifamily because they wanted to have that sort of urban center, old town feel. I'll leave it with the other board members, but it's not a standard for the residents, residential properties, and other cases, I know we've wanted them, or not we've wanted them, the developers wanted them, and we've settled with making sure that the lights were on the houses and that they were always on or something like that. So that's one thing on my list. And the other thing, I guess I had 2 questions about was, generally, this is an age-restricted community, 55 and above, and it's also, I understand, according to the PRD, that it's limited to basically 2 residences per a dwelling unit, or permanent residence. You can have guests and stuff like that, but 2 permanent residents. And I was curious about how that's going to comply, how you're going to make sure that you ensure compliance with that. Usually there's an officer or a point of contact that's listed in the development plan, and some sort of report that the zoning department is supposed to get to make sure that you're ensuring compliance. Because if not, then this could just be a rental unit for anybody. And I think that would help some of the neighbors' concerns about this being a rental unit.
Okay.
As long as you ensure compliance. And then you don't have to worry about issues of burden on the schools and traffics and all those other things that people tend to be concerned about. And then just one comment I think that the neighbors also had as well was, is there any relationship between this PRD and the one neighboring it? Are they gonna, I don't know, share facilities or resources or anything like that? And if not, then is there going to be a sales office or a model unit or a leasing office? Where does that occur? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And I think that's pretty much my list of comments or things to think about.
I'm happy to address some of those now. The street lighting, I've gotten several comments back that street lighting is not really, not a lot of people in favor of that. I think that we can investigate alternatives to that, maybe some street lamps in the front yard or lighting on the homes themselves. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Compliance with 55 and over. All I can say is my attorney says there are legal documents to be able to enforce that. I don't have the details on how that'll be accomplished at this time, but I can assure you that we'll follow those steps prior to any zoning approval. And then there is no affiliation with the Innit Bear Trail. I have spoken with the owner a couple of times, and they're very supportive of this project.
Okay,
I did suggest to them that there may be an opportunity to share facilities but we haven't gotten there yet. So as of right now, it's a completely independent living project.
all right. So how will your sort of leasing occur? Is there like an off-site office that people will go to?
There would be an offsite office for something this small. I mean, again, we're talking about 22 units. It doesn't justify having an actual on-premise office. But my office is in Powell, and or if we hire a leasing company, then we would use their facility.
Okay, so the leasing company as opposed to something on site or a neighboring. That's why I asked about the relationship to the other facility. Yeah, and that's about it. So yes, I personally have no problem, or as a commission member as well, with the PRD being here because it is neighboring the other planned residential development for, I guess we call it elderly, but 55 and above. I just want to make sure that there is some sort of method for compliance, so it's not just open to anybody, but is indeed a planned residential unit for 55 and above.
And we are committed to that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's it from my first list of comments for this go run.
Well, and just Christine, one of the points that you made, since we do have a lot of new members with us on
Okay.
the zoning commission, the Plan Elderly Residential District is a new district, not too new, but we've, I think there's only one, maybe two of this kind in the township. So
I believe there's one built, and this one, and maybe like I think there was a suggestion that Evans Farm would, but I don't think it's come to fruition.
no, the Evans Farm would actually fall under if it is going to be assisted or independent living, it's going to fall under the commercial district. So there's only, to my knowledge, is one planned PERD, which is just south of this, the Bear Trail.
So, and yeah, consider the sidewalks, please, if this is supposed to be a community for 55 and above to, enjoy the open space, walk their dogs, things of that nature. Sidewalks would be better than having to walk in the middle of the street, especially in front of your residential units.
Fair enough.
All right, I'm going to mute myself now, so you don't have to hear my kids in the background.
Thanks, Christine. So I did have a couple more comments here, John. So while we're on this one, actually, it does pertain, and I get that you guys are going to take a look at the lighting and do maybe possibly an alternate or something. But down there in the chart at the bottom, and it's kind of hard to read at the property line because of the line weight of the line there. Some of those numbers or values are covered up, but it says in the chart down there that on the property line, the max is 0.4, which I believe is to code, but then it says the average is 0.06, which I was just a little bit confused by that. I don't know if that value was wrong or not, but it's saying the max is 0.4 and the min's 0.0, which is compliant. But then when that average, I don't know if that just was incorrect or what. I just wanted to make sure that I guess at the property line, we are at a 0.4 or lower. And then when we take a look at redoing that light, just make sure we're still at that light value for foot candles.
Sure. And I can tell you that average came from all the readings along the east side that are 0. And so
Okay.
it's a statistical average that ended up being 0.06.
Okay. And then my next comment or last comment pertains to the drainage, I guess, on the north side of the property. I don't know if you can go to like the grading plan or even like the topo and boundary plan. Either one of those would work. But yeah, John, this one works. So you can kind of see the existing grades there, a little bit more aggressive towards Old State Road, but then really when you get past that first building to the northwest, furthest northwest building there, I get why you're grading. I mean, obviously away from the building and everything and doing what you're showing there, but as that grades down to 974, and then you have all those residents and those are grading down to 974, and you have this low point in between the two properties, which now it's a little bit flatter. How is that? I guess, how is that being drained, with those two properties going down to that low point in the middle there? Is there any concerns of ponding or anything that could happen back there that isn't occurring right now with those residents?
I'm just looking at the grading plan myself here. To be honest with you, yes. To be honest, it gives me some concern. I think the intent was to have some storm sewer back there that for some reason didn't make it on this plan.
Okay.
So if we certainly do not want to create any low spots or any potential for flooding. So there may be a missing line of storm sewer that would run east to west, or excuse me, west to east, and then tie into the basin there.
Yeah, that would be great if we could do that, just to make sure there wasn't any problems up there for those neighboring residents. All right, that's all I had, and just trying to reiterate what Christine was saying. I don't have a problem with what you're proposing here at all. I think that this is a good fit, especially with the property down to the south there. The density is fairly close, so to what is required. I don't have an issue with that divergence at all. I guess if is there any other comments from the board as of right now?
I did have one comment that hasn't been mentioned yet regarding that property down to the south. I noticed it's been on the market for 166 days and it's marketed towards developers or a commercial property. Could that cause any conflict in the future?
I'm not sure if we're talking about the same piece, because the property to the south is developed. It's not for sale. There is a property north of this site that's been for sale for some time.
Well, I'm sorry, the single family house down at the bottom there.
Oh, that's part of what I'm in contract to purchase.
Okay, perfect. Got it. Thank you for clearing that up.
My pleasure.
And that house will be existing, not part of the age restriction.
That's correct.
What's going to be in that house? What's the plan there? Are you going to turn it into an office or something, or how does it?
No, we'll just split it off and sell it as a single family residence. It's actually a very nice house.
Okay.
The main structure was built in the 1860s, but it's been updated since then.
Okay. Yeah, that was kind of one of my questions. I thought that house had been for sale for a while and was wondering whether or not you're planning on acquiring it. Yeah, I like your project, and particularly I like also that it's next to some assisted living existing. I like the idea that you're considering seeing if there's some shared amenities and that sort of thing. I'm curious, you said you would ask for the ability to convert it to condominiums as a part of this package. What would drive that decision to say, hey, let's convert them?
Well, to have the option to go from to have condos that are able to be rented is an easy one. To try to change something that's designated as apartments back to condominiums is a much more arduous process. So my thought was, if we condominiumized the project from the get-go and made it a rental unit, a rental community, at some point in the future, it could be converted back to condominium for sale units in the future. And so it just gives us more options. We would maintain the 55 and over designation, whether it were condominiums or rentals.
Okay. You've done some market study and indicated that, if I understand correctly, that 55 and older, and you're meeting some of the goals of the township and so forth. What's the rental rate of these 2 bedrooms that you anticipate if they were up to date?
Well, it's difficult to know because we don't know the full cost right now. Obviously, the more restrictions put on the project, the higher the cost is going to be. So that's one of the reasons we suggested vinyl, was to try to keep the construction costs to a minimum, or at least the extras that are necessary. I don't even want to guess really what the rental rates would be at this point, but somebody had mentioned Section 8, and it'll certainly be well above any Section 8 rental rates.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Are you planning on designating any of these to be affordable or available to subsidized housing? given that certainly they're 55 years and older who probably want to reside there and can, with the subsidy, can meet the rental rate?
Well, it is not an intent of mine to do that. We really are trying to provide housing to people, who live in Orange Township now and who are downsizing and selling their homes, but want to stay in the area. And I'm a little offended by the term elderly because I'm almost 55 myself, but and I don't feel elderly yet.
Yeah.
But with that being said, the intent is to be housing for residents that currently reside in Delaware County.
I agree with your term of elderly. I prefer 55 and above. So let's just.
Mom's elderly.
Even though I know it's a planned elderly residential district, it's just age restricted 55 and above because my husband is rapidly approaching that mark and also refuses to acknowledge that he is elderly.
So 55 and older.
Exactly.
And so if you have someone, you said that you're targeting people who are already in this area, but I guess theoretically people can move from anywhere, right? And you take them if they move from Columbus or they move from Virginia, right? And they can afford the rent, you take them, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Again, we're not going to restrict it to Orange Township residents, but the intent is to provide an alternative housing commodity that doesn't exist in Orange Township right now.
So I think you ought to give some consideration to affordable housing as well.
Okay.
Percentage of those. It makes reasonable sense. Okay. That's all my questions. Thanks.
I had a question as far with the existing house, and maybe I didn't understand the application fully, but I understand you're purchasing that existing home, but is that going to be, are you considering that part of the PERD district?
No, we separated that out. So the entire parcel is 5.5 acres, but the PERD zoning is for 4.9 acres.
And so that will still remain as a separate parcel?
It will.
Okay, thank you.
So then, Michelle, I have a question for you. Does that mean that one small segment that's like a half an acre or whatever would remain farm residential, even though it doesn't quite meet those guidelines anymore?
We're talking about the home?
Exactly.
I've talked to Scott Sanders about this up at Regional Planning, and essentially it's considered a leftover piece. Okay. And even though you couldn't zone it in the FR1 district today, it would not change its zoning designation unless somebody applied to do so.
Okay.
And as part of this project, it will have sanitary sewer hookup, and it's on public water as it stands now.
Mm-hmm. And we've discussed the access issues to Old State, and you're working on that, so that's fine.
Okay, any other comments from the board? All right. At this time, we are going to open it up to public comment. Again, just to reiterate, when you would like to speak, just please unmute yourself, state your name and address, and limit your comment to 3 minutes, please.
And also, if you're able to raise your hand on the Zoom application, that would be preferred. If not, we just ask everybody to give a few seconds in between everybody's time for comment. Thank you.
Michelle, is that in the chat feature or down at the bottom in order to raise your hand? Just so everybody knows where that's at.
I am a host, so I can't see it, but it should be reactions on the bottom.
Yeah.
It's noted there.
Yep.
Thank you. And then I'll keep a timer on for public comment.
All right. The first person that would like to speak is on here is Ryan Stowe. I'll ask him to unmute.
How's that? Is that working?
Yep.
Yeah, my name is Ryan Stowe. Live in Walker Wood, 2072 Maxwell. So we border the east side of where the proposed development is, and currently looking out over the field that exists there. We've been here for about 5 years, and when we moved here, part of the appeal of our lot was not being next to, well, not backing up to anybody, and our lot being next to the access on the HOA area back there, even put us further from our neighbors to the north. So it's a, you know, a nice spot there, and never thought that there would be, thought there would be development, but was hoping it would be single family, maybe larger lots, higher end homes, definitely less dense. And that's kind of what I was hoping, if anything would ever happen. We have 3 small children that like to play back there. You know, right now we don't have to worry about any cars. We don't have to worry about other people back there. Lights, didn't even think of that till this meeting, and just really not for this currently as everything is being proposed. Not really for rentals. I don't think they have a vested interest in the property. And I know that it says 55 and over, but I don't know how long that'll be, how all that really works. I've heard some things that it doesn't all have to be 55, and I wanted to know if that's actually true, if there's a minimum that can be any age. Can there be people under 55 if they do have any, you know, children that live at home? Just currently not excited for this.
I'm not sure if the procedure is for me to address that comment.
John, we're gonna, sorry,
Yeah.
we'll go through all the public comment and then we'll respond to it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Adam.
All right, the next person that raised their hand on here is Duta. So I'll unmute him.
Yeah, hi. I'm Sandipan Datta. I live in 2000 Maxwell Avenue. That is the exact north side of the proposed property, bordering that property. And I also echo the concerns that Ryan just said. When we moved in here, not much long ago, we definitely did not expect that it will be an empty lot for long. But again, we expected some amount, something on ownership will come up, either a single family home or otherwise. Because with apartments, one of the major concern is they don't have equity in the property. And that's a major concern. There are a lot of influx, outflux that happens in any apartment. If it is ownership, again, I don't want to use the word senior living, but if it is an ownership 55 above living, I'll say it will not be that bad. But for a rental, we do have our concerns against that, particularly borrowing and rental community. Also, I was going through the Orange Township guidelines on PERD. It seems that 20% of the units can be occupied by 55 and below, like 54 and below. And one member of any unit has to be 55 and above, which essentially means the other member can be below 55. So it is not, we call it 55 and above, but there are some gaps in that. But a more important concern I have is about the rental aspect of it, number one. Number two, I remember you said that you are willing to push back the offset between the properties in the north. And that is something I really appreciate, because 30 feet seems to be a little bit less, particularly with the trees and everything in between. So if you can push it back a little more, that will be really great. Thank you. With that, I yield the floor.
Thanks, Sandapan.
All right, the next person, the username is Anthony, and I will unmute them to speak.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. If we don't have an actual rent, what's the minimum rent?
Can you state your name and address, please?
Oh, Anthony Miranda, 2077 Hare Court.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the minimum rent that it would be? We know that you can't say what it may end up being, but what's the minimum? The other thing is, if we're talking about affordable housing, at first when we started out, we were talking about it would not impact any of the property values. That will for sure impact the property values. And then if we're talking about a true retirement community, why would it be 55? I mean, I'm not sure I know anybody that retired at 55. Can we raise that to 62? And like the other gentleman said, if you have one person in there that's 62 and somebody else who's 18 and inviting friends over or doing whatever, then that's pretty much the loophole that we would have. So can we raise it to say 62, 65 and have both people that have to be in that bracket? And then it looks like this is just from the site plan that I can see, it is very crammed in there. And I'm not sure that would be appealing to anybody that I know. So I'm not sure what the focus is or what the reason to jam it all in other than just, revenue, but I'm not sure that's going to be helpful to any of the residents that are around that property. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, the next username is Scott Shaw. And I'll unmute him.
Hi, thank you. Scott Shaw. I live on 2035 Maxwell. I would just echo the same concerns that have been voiced, primarily the rental and the residents that would be in those properties would not have the same vested interest as a homeowner. Certainly condos would be more desirable, but I would agree with what Ryan said. If the land's going to be developed as such, I think I would prefer to see it as single family homes. And I agree with Tony Miranda's comment that the density seems quite high and would be less desirable and impact the neighborhood here. So those would be my biggest concerns with the property. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
The next one, the name is Corey Lavieres. I'll ask him. Mute.
Hi, I'm Corey Lavieres. I'm at 2145 Hare Court. First of all, I'd like to say that independent living, the idea of putting an independent living community right next to the inn there, I think is a very good idea. Personally, I would like to see something like that happen. I think that there is a demand for that type of housing in the area. However, my concern, to echo Mr. Miranda and Mr. Shaw's comments, the fact that the 55 plus age restriction seems to be very loosely defined, and the way that requirement is written, there could very possibly be many people that end up residing in this community who are not even 55 and older, but much younger. And then to kind of point out some of the, even some of the members have mentioned, that kind of jokingly here this evening about the fact that, people in their mid to late 50s necessarily aren't considered elderly, or most of us would think of it when we think of seniors. And one of the developers' goals that Mr. Wicks pointed out is that when they did a survey, that one of their goals was to encourage proportionate senior and retiree communities. I think that's a good idea. However, I think that zoning this as a 55+ rental community, the rental aspect, first and foremost there, to me, that's not what I think of when I think of elderly retirement community or a PERD. So I guess one question I have is, if it has to be a rental scenario, why would not making the rental obligation 62 and older make more sense to ultimately achieve the goal of developing a retirement community or a community for retired empty nesters and people who, to Mr. Wick's point, who already may be in Orange Township, are downsizing, selling their homes. Again, I don't think many people in their 50s is the demographic we're thinking of when we're thinking of that type of community or those type of renters, if you will. The other point I'd like to make is I would much rather see a condo scenario where ownership is involved versus just a typical renter tenant. I think if these were condos, that would alleviate a lot of the community's concerns, because of course the ownership aspect helps to maintain the community, and the occupants of the units certainly have a more vested interest. The other thing is, I think even if there wasn't an age designation, given the type of community that's proposed here in these plans, if this was just strictly a condo community with similar amenities to what have been proposed, it would most likely end up being a pseudo retirement community anyway, just given the nature of the housing market and the demand and supply right now. I think putting it as a 55+ rental community changes that completely as far as who is actually going to be living there ultimately, and whether that's a year from now, a few years down the road, or excuse me, once it's completed, things can change quite a bit as far as the enforcement of those rules, as far as the management goes, the property could be sold, etc. And if it's designated as a 55+ community where only 80% of those residents have to be 80% of the units have to have one member who's 55 and older, theoretically, although maybe not very likely, there could be 44 occupants in that community, and 18 of them could be 55 or older, and there could be 26 people technically per the requirements.
Hey, Corey, I'm sorry. We're limiting public comment to 3 minutes. If you can just.
Okay, that was actually all I had.
Thank you.
Also, regarding public comment, if anybody, just for the sake of being redundant or repetitive, we'd appreciate it if you just limit it to new comments going forward. I think we only have a few left here, but just state any new comments that already haven't been mentioned. Thank you.
All right, the next person raising their hand is username is Terry. I'll ask them to unmute.
Hi, my name is Terry McCarty. I live at 2148 Maxwell Avenue, so a little bit east of this proposed community. The two main questions or concerns that I have that have not already been addressed are, this was the first time we had seen the grading map, but the retention pond is actually moving to a completely different place from kind of the middle of the property to the southeast property. I know that the field behind our home is prone to flooding, and I know he mentioned the steward drain that may go on the north face, but just hoping that, you know, this won't give more prone to flooding to the east side where we live. And then the other question is, if the initial PERD application is for a rental of people 55 and up, if it eventually switches to condos, do you still maintain that 55 and over, or is there anything that changes with the difference in designation from rental to condo?
Okay.
There
We
was-
do have, yeah, we
Yeah,
did have
go
one
ahead,
that was
Jeff.
in the chat that would like
Sorry.
to speak. That would be Tom Carpenter, so I'll ask him to unmute now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, great. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. I am among the elderly at age 60, so I apologize for that. I do echo most of the concerns that I've heard voiced by other folks tonight very strongly. I did have a couple of points that I would like to add, and that's really about the two divergences. And I'm not expert in how zoning works, but it seemed to me that for the first divergence with the 10-acre minimum, we're going to sort of add on the Bear Trail property to get around that minimum. I'm not sure if that's a typical procedure or not. It seems kind of strange to me to just grab onto a neighboring property to meet that requirement. Similarly, with the divergence 15.09, the 23 units. So we heard a few minutes ago by the developer that the existing house is going to be carved out, but for purposes of meeting the 4 units per acre, we're now going to include that property. So again, I'm confused, and maybe the board can enlighten us on the appropriateness of that and if it's a common practice or not. Regarding the over 55 policy, I'm concerned, as the others are, about the 80% rule and other things. I did a little bit of research, and I happened to find some meeting minutes from this very zoning commission from 2018, where there was a big discussion about this very topic. And pretty clearly, the commission members were admitting that it's almost impossible to enforce this, and it seems to be, my words, not theirs, a bit of a fool's errand. So that creates a big concern on my point as to how viable that is to really have a true control. And then, what do you do when there's a violation? Now, can you really throw somebody out, or whatever you would do as a consequence of that? I don't know. Those are my comments, and thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Jeff, is there anybody else? I don't see any hands raised.
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't gotten any chats or requests. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's safe to say we can close public comment.
Yep. At this time, we're going to close public comment. And John, if you want to respond to those comments.
I'll do my best. I tried to take notes here. I hear a consistent concern about being able to police the 55 and over, and also the fact that the 55 and over guideline is potentially not enforceable. When I presented this or proposed this particular concept, my intent was to just follow the townships the way that they've spelled out the PERD. So their definitions would govern how this thing would be policed. 55 and over, if they say 80% of the units must have at least one resident that's 55 and over, that's what we intended to comply with. Which means, and then also at least one resident must be 55 and over. I don't know a lot of post 55-year-old people that have much younger people, like students living with them, but I'm sure there are some. And maybe the intent isn't that you have 0 students here, but you certainly have much less than if you had no age restriction whatsoever. So we're not looking to do a special zoning district here. We're looking to comply with the PERD zoning the way it's written in the code. And the township has defined the what the age restriction complies or consists of. As far as the boardwalk,
John, I'm sorry, I have a question to that. Is your legal counsel present for this meeting?
No.
Okay, I think that, and I'm not an expert with the age restriction stuff, but I know there's some type of law that mandates, you know, restricting it, and maybe at the second hearing, if council can provide. I think there's a lot of confusion on whether or not this will actually stay as enforced, and if so, how is that going to happen?
Yeah, we'll certainly get a better understanding of that for the next hearing.
Thank you.
There were a couple folks that suggested, I believe, that the age be raised to 62. You know, again, we're just trying to comply with what's written in the township. By raising the age from 55 to 62 is going to further restrict the number of folks that actually could live here. And remember that a lot of people seem to support the condo versus the apartment concept. We're trying to provide something that doesn't exist in the township. Literally, this is the only one right now that would be a rental community. 22 units out of the 18,000 units that exist in Orange Township. So, you know, it's something new. It's an opportunity for only 22 families or couples to be able to find a place to rent in Orange Township. You know, if there's a big problem with that from either the BZC or the trustees or even the community, I guess we can condominiumize it and make them all for sale. But I wouldn't want to restrict the opportunity to rent them, because I do believe that that's a population of people that that would take advantage of this property and this project. I'm just looking through the comments here. As far as the flooding goes, I didn't understand Ms. McCarty's comment about the basin moving from the center of the site to the southwest corner, southeast corner. I don't remember. Oh, I see. There's an existing pond there. That is not a retention pond. That's actually an old farm pond that'll be filled in. It's spring fed, so we'll have to tie the spring into the storm system and drain it out to its natural path. There were some questions about the divergences and why. I think the density issue, there was more right-of-way taken for South Old State Road than is conventional. And because of that, the parent parcel went from 6 acres down to 5.5 acres. We are not using the existing house to get under the 4 units to the acre. I did put in my application, I did some math to show that if the typical amount of right-of-way had been taken for Old State, and you added that house in, you actually would be under 4 units to the acre. But in fact, we're asking for 4.2 units to the acre for the gross density, so that's where the divergence comes in. That does not include the existing house. That's all I see here that I needed to address, but I'm sure I missed something. I'm happy to address any more. And certainly when we come back, if there are, I'm sure I'll be able to review this video and address the comments more thoroughly in writing.
I took notes too. There was a question on are you able to even provide a minimum rent cost?
I just hesitate to do it because invariably it's going to be dictated on cost. It's going to be dictated on what is the cost to build this development out. And, you know, if you start losing units, and I know that really hasn't been, there was maybe a couple people that wanted, thought the density was too high, but losing units on something like this really impacts the rent rates and the prices, because the amount of infrastructure you have to build is basically going to be the same.
Mm-hmm. I think the last thing that was discussed that we have not hit was the other divergence that you're requesting based on the minimum acreage. The reason behind that, if you want to elaborate more.
Well, the reason is because this is a landlocked piece of property. So if it were a 10-acre piece, we'd be able to do it. The reason I felt it was justifiable is because it is adjacent to another PERD parcel, and together they will be a PERD zoning classification that's greater than 10 acres. It's not like we were trying to piggyback it or try to do anything sneaky.
And this is not part of the end of their trail acreage. So this is 5 acres alone. Yeah, or 4.96. Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct. So I was trying to use that as a justification for the divergence.
All right, thanks, John. Is there any other comments from the board at this time?
Well, I'll tell you one, this is Dennis. I think the one that scares me a little, which I would really like to know, is that I think everybody's concerned, or at least a lot of people are concerned, me included, that these aren't lower end apartments. I mean, I heard somebody say affordable, and I'm not even sure what that number is, but it needs to fit with the neighborhood and Walker Wood and everything that's here in Orange Township. Commission made a huge mistake a couple of decades ago, maybe 15 years ago, and there was some Section 8 housing. I'm not sure forget what the name of that was, but we don't want anything like that.
Well, that's not what we're proposing market rate rents. So
okay.
Just to be clear on that. On the other hand, I'm not sure you can, with the disparate impact rules, I'm not sure you can omit the opportunity for somebody to come in and you can't say there's no affordable housing in this area, but based on the rents, the way
Affordable
we
can mean lots of things. I mean, affordable is not a problem. I guess it was the Section 8 type thing that I wanted to stay out of. Affordable is not a problem because that's just a arbitrary number that can mean lots of things.
We're going to make the rents as affordable as we can based on the cost of the project.
Sure.
Yeah, and Dennis, just for the record, even when you talk about quote unquote Section, at the end of the day, the housing authority that provides the additional subsidy ensures that the owner gets the right amount of rent. So it's not any lesser affordability or lesser rents than anything else. So I just want to make sure we're not degrading necessarily Section 8. It's a program that's available. It's available around the nation. It's a great program. So
I was going to make a comment about the age restrictions. I was there for part of the conversations, but I was not part of the zoning rewrite for the PERD. But there have been discussions in the past when we have discussed about 55 and above or age restricted communities. One of the reasons we had discussed like the 80%, 20%, is, let's say, for example, my husband's almost 55. I'm not near that. If I moved into one of these places and heaven forbid my husband had a heart attack and it was 100% 55 or above, I would have to sell and move out, or I would have to move out. Or, if you're a grandparent and heaven forbid something happens to your children and you end up with your grandkids and have to take care of them for a little while, we wanted to try to keep it open for life events that nobody plans but somehow happens. And so that was sort of the 80-20 compromise in that sense. And I wanted to remind people that, so it's not, you are correct, 100% 55 and above, but that extra percentage of 20% is for life events that might happen like that. And the other issue I wanted to bring up is that according to our code, these are restricted to 2 permanent residences. So 2 permanent inhabitants in each resident, I should rephrase that. So it's, a husband, a wife, a person and a caregiver, or an extended family, whatever family unit it is, but that it's not, a family of 5 living in one of these, or even a family of 4 or 3. It's 2 people living in each unit, which also restricts some of the, it's going to be a bunch of young people having parties or something like that, that I believe were comments from the public. The question of enforcement, we will hear back from the lawyers, and I hope, Michelle, is it possible for us to reach out to all council as well about this?
Yes, I can invite our council to attend the next hearing too,
Okay.
just to provide further explanation.
Okay, because I think that might be helpful for the residents who have concerns about this age restriction and requirements. So that's sort of my last comments, 2 cents.
And let me just add one additional thought on that. Also, it's just that 55 and older is not a new concept. That has been around. There are millions of properties across the United States that are 55 and older, and some would put every property in Orange Township to shame as to how well they're maintained, how expensive they are, all of those great things. So 55 and older is a concept that has been out there, well maintained. Rules have been established extraordinarily well. They can enforce that idea of 55 and older solely, or one, and as you noted, Christine, if life events happen, or some people marry people that are older than them, or younger than them, or whatever the circumstances may be. But at the end of the day, it turns out to be an incredible program and properties that are very well maintained across the United States. So it's a good project to see that it's potentially coming to Lewis Center.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other last minute comments from the board? So, John, I know you still have some things to work out with the fire marshal and everything. And I don't know, Michelle, is there I guess, how long do you think it would take you to make the revisions based on the comments and feedback from tonight? When would you look to reschedule for the next hearing?
I guess I'd like to do a date and time certain, at least 30 days out.
Okay.
We would recommend that too.
Yeah.
So what I'll do after tonight, probably early next week, I'll send you the comments that came from the commission, the residents, and staff, and put it in a master memo and send that out to you. And then as far as the revised submittal, we would ask to have that at least a week before the next hearing. So if you're thinking your turnaround is, in 30 days, we might want to look at towards the end of April as the next hearing date.
Do we have to set it now? Otherwise, we'd have to advertise again, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So can you tell me what's available in April?
So for the commission, our April 27th regular meeting is still available, as we don't have any applications that, or if you, so if we did April 27th, John, I would need materials by April 20th.
I'm comfortable with the April 27th if you are.
Okay. Can I get a motion to continue the hearing until April 27th, 2021 via Zoom
At 7 p.m.
at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. McNulty to continue application number ZON-21-02 to April 27th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Second by Mr. Pierce. Those voting, Mr. Bahavich,
Yes.
Ms. Trevellis,
Yes.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
and Ms. Harris.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Board, don't leave just yet. We have a couple other items.
Meeting minutes.
Oh, and we have a second item, Adam. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Which is an exciting item.
Yes.
So I guess if I can continue on with the second item, I will. So our staff, as long as I have been with the township, so over 5 years, we have been wanting to do a zoning resolution rewrite. And this rewrite is not just minor amendments that we do every year. It is completely looking from the top of the page to the end of this resolution and rewriting it. I think we are long past due on this. It's been almost, I would say, several decades since we really did rewrite our zoning resolution. So we have worked with our legal counsel to provide an RFP, request for proposal, And the next step would this be, I did send that out to the board. The next step would be I just asked the zoning commission to make a simple motion to approve moving forward with the zoning rewrite and letting us select the consultant.
Michelle, do we still have, I think you sent this to us previously, but do we have time to still make a comment on?
Oh, yes, yep. Sure. Oh, yeah, and this is, we try to be, when we were putting the RFP together, we try to be as broad in the scope as possible. As when we start having these meetings, I think things are gonna come along the line. My team and we have a running list of things we would like changed in the code just because of consistent things that we keep having problems with. And obviously we all see these new residential products coming in that we just don't have a code that fits it. So there's a lot of things that we're going to be considering with this. So as less to your point, if you don't have any comments right now, feel free to tune in at all. This is going to take up to a year. This is a very long and intensive project, which I did get the appropriations approved by the Board of Trustees.
Michelle, can you explain what the process will be? Because this is just a request for proposals. I assume one will be accepted. I assume at some point we'll have meetings with the public, with the commission. How exactly is that going to play out?
So right now the RFP outlines, and I'll actually provide the timeline on the screen. You can still see my screen, right? So for those that are not familiar with the request for proposals, because of the amount that this is going to cost, we are doing kind of a bidding process, if you'd say. So we will be publishing a request for proposals for a consultant to apply to do our zoning resolution rewrite. And so within that, we do have a time frame on when it will be published, when you can submit, when the deadline is. Once we get all the submittals, we will then create a rating committee. So we haven't established who will be in the committee yet, but we would like at least some one or two members from the zoning commission, maybe even a member from the BZA. And then it'll probably be Jeff and I rating these consultants' applications that come in. From there, after we rate them, we will identify the top three, and we will most likely have interviews with each of those top three. And then we will present the top candidate to the zoning commission, and the zoning commission would then have to take action on accepting the consultant to move forward with the zoning rewrite.
Do you expect to just select one firm, or it could be multiple firms, or have you made a decision on that? Any thoughts on that yet?
It was typically, so my experience, because we just selected a consultant for our parks master plan. Typically it's one consultant that we would work with, but that consultant would potentially hire sub-consultants. So depending on if they want to hire a GIS or a mapping consultant to help with the graphics, they would partner with them, but we wouldn't be seeking separate consultants on our end.
And then, go ahead, Les.
The other question I had was, do you have a list of like firms that you will already send this to as well? I mean, sometimes you have a list and you send it out while you still publish it as well. I don't know if you have a list.
So that we're doing this, I don't know the exact term, but it's I would call it a fair bidding process. So we are not going out of our way to directly reach out to consultants, but it will be published in our newspaper, our website, and the American Planning Association, which is most planning firms and zoning firms would be taking a look at that on a daily basis to reach out. So
fair acquisition requirement.
And then yes, and that also avoids us creating any type of bias during this review process. Yeah, I'm pretty well connected in the community, so the communication needs to be fair and transparent. And I will be the project manager for this project.
And my only other question, is there any incentive? I didn't see it in the proposal here as far as when I look at the scoring and so forth, any incentives for partnering with women-owned businesses or anything like that to bring potentially bring some different perspective to the table?
I hope to think diversity would be considered. I will only be one rater out of the five of us, but there is, oh, go ahead, Les.
Clarify, I mean, from the proposer, whoever is the proposer, that either they consider partnering with a woman-owned business to deliver this rewrite for us, or that they themselves have the necessary diversity. I have confidence in you, total confidence.
Yes. You know, we really have to, I don't know what we'll see. But I know the township would appreciate any.
Yeah, sometimes proposals specify that to say, hey, if you do this, partner with as a subcontractor with maybe a woman-owned business or something like small business, something like that.
Sure.
5 extra points or whatever. So just something to consider.
So I guess the question I have is, we're going to have a consultant rewrite or review and rewrite our zoning text, which, yes, it sort of needs an overhaul just by, we're missing setbacks for the PERD, as we discovered tonight.
Good point. Yep.
So you can make a note of that. But what role do the public have, or do the zoning commission or the BZA have in this rewrite process? Are we having formal meetings? Are we just going to have workshops?
Yeah, probably all, honestly.
Okay.
Again, this is a very extensive project. When we did the comp plan in 2018, that took 6 months.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. And I didn't want to make a direct comparison, but that had a whole variety of surveys to the public,
right?
Open houses, workshops, things of that nature. So I just wanted to know, so that is, it perhaps it hasn't been realized yet, but that is in the part of the thought process that will occur once we get this off.
Yes, we will be, as far as the engagement goes, I do not expect to do as much engagement as we did for the comp plan, because the comp plan is really defined by the community and their vision, but the zoning commission or the zoning resolution, that is, that is creating the law. And so we need the experts to focus on that, which is the zoning commission and staff. We will have plenty of stakeholder meetings throughout the community to get feedback, and we will do some outreach, but I can't foresee us doing a full-blown survey like we did, because we had over 500 results.
Okay.
Michelle, I agree. I'm not sure the public has any spot in this. I think you're exactly right. It's commission and the BZA and people involved with the township. We actually tried to do this probably 2005, 2006, and it was a disaster because
Yes.
It wasn't organized. This is organized and has a much greater chance of success than that fiasco did for 4 or 5 meetings 14 years ago.
Yep, and then we're kind of leaving it up to the consultant to provide a timeline and what they suggest is going through the process, and we will rate it based on on that too. So again, that'll all be shared with the zoning commission once we identify the top candidate.
Fair enough. Sounds good.
Anyone have any other questions? I know this is a pretty big ordeal and especially with the 2 or newer board members. I'm excited for it. It's a long time coming. I don't know when we'll squeeze all the meetings in, but hey, that's a later problem.
I'd fix the header on the first page.
Oh yeah, I did change it on the one I'm sharing on my screen. So, oh, actually I didn't change my title. I will do that. Yep.
And our trustees are.
I was gonna say I would update the trustees.
Yeah. Yep. I will. Sorry about that.
No. I just got that when you pulled it up.
It's funny. The reason why the letterhead we have to change, because I have been working on this for that long. So.
Yeah. So Michelle, do we need to, I guess to move forward, do we need to take a motion on this or anything, or is it just?
I do need a motion, yes.
So is it just a motion to proceed with the RFP?
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a motion to move forward and proceed with the RFP regarding the Orange Township resolution review and update?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Trevellis to move forward with these request for proposals for the Orange Township zoning resolution review and update. Second by Mr. Pierce. Those voting, Mr. Pahovich,
Yes.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Ms. Trevellis,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
and Ms. Harris.
Yes.
All right, thank you. I will keep you updated along the way. Probably expect some monthly emails, and hopefully we're trying to start the meetings this summer. So, you know, when the world goes back to normal, more meetings. I do have 2 sets of minutes I'd like the trustees to zoning commission to consider. Ooh, it's getting late. Hopefully it's fairly quick, but since we're all on still. The first set of minutes I have is from January 5th, 2021, and that's in regards to the work session for the Route 23 overlay, the Cheswick Village application.
All right. I don't know if I ever got a set of these minutes. So.
Well, there is questions for you, actually. One of them.
Well, I did re-listen to this. It was in one of my many emails that I sent to you, so I'm sorry if it was missed, but your name was spelled wrong on line 373. And then I did re-listen to the recording on this as Cindy was having problems with it. But if this sounds right, Christine, I believe you said it's not 23, so it could be worse. It's what I consider a feeder road or a service road, but I don't see it as being feasible or available as the other one based on the location.
Sounds good to me. Because like I said, I don't remember receiving these minutes. I'm trying to find them.
That's it. Well, did anybody else not receive them? Because we can.
I got it, Michelle.
Okay.
Okay. Because I know I wasn't available for all the 23 comments. I think I missed 1 or 2 of those meetings, but.
And that, yeah, the Cheswick Village, that's the property south of Home Depot.
Okay.
And then the only other comment I had was in the beginning, and I will give Cindy her name, but on line 68, the woman, and I can't pronounce her name, Anna, it's the Bejedes, her name's spelled wrong, so I will clarify that on my end. I think that's all I had.
Yeah, I didn't have any comments for this one. Dennis, anything? I think
I'm good.
Okay. Can I get a motion or, oh, wait, Les, you were here at this one. Did you have any comments?
I have no comments.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 5th, 2021, RCOD-20-02 Cheswick Village?
So moved.
As amended?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McNulty to approve the zoning commission minutes from January 5th, 2021 in regards to Cheswick Village. Second by Ms. Trevellis. Those voting, Mr. Pahovich,
Yes.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Ms. Trevellis,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
and Ms. Harris.
Yes.
All right. And then the last set of minutes is in regards to the Slate Ridge single family amendment from January 26, 2021. I didn't have any comments for this one.
Okay. And I don't think I got it. It's not in my files. so I'm gonna.
Well, I do read these thoroughly, so, and I
Thank you.
too. So.
Usually I like to read what I say to make sure it's correct. As witnessed by our last minutes we just approved.
All right, any other comments? Can I get a motion to approve the January 26, 2021 zoning application ZON-20-03 Kerbler Farms LLC?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. McNulty to approve zoning commission minutes from January 26, 2021 in regards to Kerbler Farms LLC / Kerbler Builders. Second by Ms. Trevellis. Those voting, Mr. Pahovich,
Yes.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Ms. Trevellis,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
and Ms. Harris.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. That's all I have this evening. Thank you all.
All right.
Bye.
All
Thank
right.
you.
And we'll see you in April. So